I never thought I'd be writing something like this. I'm Robert, 31 years old, and my life turned upside down 3 months ago. My wife Juliet, 28F, and I had been married for just 10 months when everything fell apart. We dated for 2 years before getting married, and I thought I knew her inside out. But I guess I was wrong. Juliet and I met through mutual friends at a housewarming party. She was funny, smart, and seemed to have her life together. She worked as a marketing manager at a tech company, and I was impressed by her drive and ambition. We clicked instantly, and within 6 months of dating, we knew we wanted to spend our lives together. During our dating period, Juliet often talked about her family dynamics. She was particularly vocal about how her dad Tom's infidelity had affected their family. She'd tell me stories about growing up in a home filled with tension and arguments. According to her, her mom Karen was the strong one who held the family together despite Tom's multiple affairs. Juliet would often say she could never forgive cheaters because she'd seen firsthand how infidelity destroys families. Juliet's sister Catherine, 32F, was always supportive of our relationship. She and her husband James, 35M, often invited us over for dinner or weekend barbecues. They had what seemed like the perfect marriage, 2 kids, a beautiful house, and successful careers. James worked at the same company as Juliet, though in different departments. I never thought twice about them having lunch together occasionally or messaging about work stuff. Everything changed 3 months ago when Catherine called me asking to meet urgently at a local cafe. Her voice sounded strange on the phone, but I didn't think much of it. When I arrived, Catherine looked terrible. Her eyes were red and puffy, and her hands shook as she held her coffee cup. Without saying a word, she pulled out her phone and showed me something that made my world collapse: messages between Juliet and James. These weren't just friendly messages. They were explicit conversations about their sexual encounters, plans for hotel meetups, and intimate photos they'd shared. Catherine had discovered everything accidentally when she borrowed James's laptop for work and found their chat history synced to it. She kept scrolling through messages dating back months, and I felt increasingly sick with each new revelation. The messages showed they'd been meeting at a hotel near their office during lunch breaks. They had a regular room booking every Wednesday. They'd created separate email accounts to communicate and had been planning weekend getaways under the guise of work trips. The level of deception was mind-blowing. I sat there in that cafe for 2 hours, reading through messages that destroyed everything I believed about my marriage. Catherine cried as she explained how she'd started noticing small changes in James's behavior. He was more protective of his phone, working late more often, and being unusually attentive to Juliet at family gatherings. But she never suspected her own sister would betray her like this. I went home that evening with my mind in chaos. Juliet was in the kitchen making dinner like it was just another normal day. She smiled when I walked in, asked about my day, and continued chopping vegetables. The normalcy of it all made me feel sick. How many times had she acted normal after coming home from being with James? I confronted her right there in the kitchen. At first, she tried to deny everything, claiming Catherine was making things up because she was jealous of our happiness. But when I mentioned the hotel receipts and messages, Juliet's facade cracked. She burst into tears and admitted everything. Her excuses made it even worse. She claimed she felt lonely because I was working long hours at my new startup job. Yes, I had taken a new position 6 months ago that required longer hours, but we still had our weekend dates and movie nights. She said she felt neglected and James was there to listen. According to her, things just happened naturally. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. How does someone naturally end up in a hotel room with their sister's husband? How does someone naturally destroy 2 marriages? But Juliet kept talking, kept making excuses. She said she tried to end it multiple times but couldn't because she and James had developed real feelings for each other. I packed a bag and went to stay with my friend Mike. That's when the real circus began. Juliet's mom Karen, 55F, started calling me constantly. At first, she just begged me to come home and talk things out with Juliet. But when I refused, she changed tactics. She started bringing up Juliet's childhood trauma. Karen went on about how watching Tom's infidelity had scarred Juliet deeply. She claimed Juliet had abandonment issues and trust problems because of her father's actions. According to Karen, Juliet was just acting out her childhood trauma and needed understanding and support, not abandonment. The manipulation didn't stop there. Karen started calling my parents, telling them how Juliet was struggling with mental health issues because of her childhood, and how I was making it worse by not being supportive. To my shock, my parents actually bought into it. My mom started suggesting I give Juliet another chance because marriage is sacred and everyone deserves forgiveness. But how do you forgive someone who not only cheated on you but did it with their sister's husband? How do you move past a betrayal that destroys not just your marriage but an entire family? Catherine and James have 2 kids, a 6-year-old boy and a 4-year-old girl. Those children's lives are now torn apart because Juliet and James couldn't control themselves. Juliet started showing up at my workplace during lunch breaks. She would wait in the lobby, crying and causing scenes until I agreed to talk to her. She'd say things like she was scared of losing me like her mom almost lost her dad, that she self-sabotaged our marriage because she didn't feel worthy of love. But all I could think about was how she managed to go from these supposed crying sessions straight to hotel meetings with James. I finally had to tell my office security not to let her in. I blocked her number and told my friends not to pass any messages from her. I'm proceeding with the divorce, but Juliet's family is making it as difficult as possible. They're telling everyone who'll listen that I'm heartless for not understanding Juliet's psychological issues. They're painting me as the bad guy who abandoned their daughter when she needed help the most. My friends are divided on this. Some think I'm doing the right thing by walking away. Others suggest I at least try marriage counseling since we haven't been married long. They say first-year marriages are always difficult and that Juliet deserves a chance to work through her issues. But I can't get past the betrayal. It's not just about the cheating, it's about her choosing her sister's husband, knowing it would destroy not just our marriage but her sister's family too. It's about the months of lying, the elaborate planning, the complete disregard for the consequences of their actions. I just needed to get this off my chest. Am I wrong for not wanting to work things out? Should I really be more understanding of her childhood trauma? Update 1 first, I want to thank everyone who commented on my original post. The support has been overwhelming, and it's helped me stay strong through what happened next. Because just when I thought things couldn't get worse, they did. Yesterday, I got another call from Catherine. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her at first. After our last meeting at the cafe, she'd been doing her own investigation. She couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't adding up about the timeline Juliet and James had given us. Catherine started digging through old phone bills, credit card statements, and email records. What she found destroyed both of us all over again. The affair didn't start 4 months ago like they claimed. There were hotel charges and late-night phone calls dating back to before my wedding to Juliet. Catherine found records showing they'd been meeting at hotels since we were engaged. The same hotel where we had our wedding reception, they'd been meeting there regularly while we were planning our wedding. But the worst part wasn't the hotel records. Catherine had managed to recover deleted emails between them using some tech help from her friend who works in IT. The emails went back over a year, and reading them made me physically sick. They had been planning how to keep their relationship secret during our wedding preparations. They discussed how to act normal during family gatherings, how to delete their messages, which hotels were safest to meet at. The most devastating email was from our wedding day. While I was getting ready with my groomsmen, excited about starting my life with Juliet, she was sending emails to James about how she wished he was the one waiting at the altar. She wrote about how hard it would be to say her vows to me while looking at him in the crowd. James replied saying he felt the same way, but they had to keep up appearances. I remember that day so clearly now. How Juliet seemed emotional during the ceremony, I thought it was because she was happy. How she disappeared for almost an hour during the reception, she said she needed time alone to process everything. Now I know she was probably with James somewhere in that same hotel. When I confronted Juliet with this new information, she finally broke down and told me everything. Apparently, she'd been in love with James for years, even before he married Catherine. They met through work when Juliet was fresh out of college and James was already established in his career. According to Juliet, they had an intense connection but James chose Catherine because she was the more stable choice. Catherine had a good job, came from a good family, and was ready to settle down. Juliet was still figuring out her life. Juliet claims she tried to move on after James married Catherine. She dated other people, built her career, and genuinely thought she had gotten over him when she met me. She says she really did fall in love with me, but seeing James at family gatherings and work made it impossible to completely forget her feelings for him. When we got engaged, she convinced herself she could make our marriage work while keeping her feelings for James buried. But the most shocking revelation came when Catherine confronted their mom Karen about the timeline. Under pressure, Karen admitted she had known about Juliet and James's affair before our wedding. She caught them together at their family cabin 3 months before the wedding day. Instead of telling anyone, she decided to keep it quiet. Karen's reasoning was completely twisted. She thought if Juliet went through with marrying me, she would eventually get over James. Karen believed that once Juliet was legally committed to me, her feelings for James would fade and everything would work out. She was also worried about Catherine's marriage and decided that keeping quiet was the best way to protect both her daughters. Catherine is completely broken. Not only did her husband cheat on her with her sister, but her own mother helped cover it up. She's filing for divorce and planning to move to another state with her kids. She can't stand being around any of them anymore. The kids are confused and hurt, they don't understand why their mom is taking them away from their dad and Aunt Juliet, who they used to love spending time with. I confronted Karen about her role in this mess. Her justification made me want to scream. She actually tried to defend herself, saying she was trying to protect both her daughters. She believed that if Juliet married me, she might forget about James, and Catherine's marriage would be safe. When that plan clearly failed, she still kept quiet because she didn't want both her daughters to have failed marriages. The hypocrisy is astounding. This is the same woman who's been guilt-tripping me about not understanding Juliet's childhood trauma from her father's supposed cheating. Now it turns out she actively helped Juliet cheat and lie. She facilitated the destruction of 2 marriages while preaching about family values and understanding. The entire family is falling apart now. Juliet's dad, who everyone believed was the cheater in the family, is actually supporting Catherine and me. He said he's ashamed of his wife and daughter for their actions. This has caused a massive rift between him and Karen. They're not speaking to each other, and he's moved out of their house. My lawyer says this new information about the affair predating our marriage might help my divorce case. We're looking into whether this qualifies as marriage fraud since Juliet clearly entered into our marriage under false pretenses. She never gave our marriage a real chance. She was involved with James before, during, and after our wedding. Juliet's latest attempt to contact me was through her younger cousin. She sent a long letter trying to explain herself. She wrote about how confused and scared she was before the wedding, how she thought marrying me was the right thing to do because I was the safe choice. She said she thought she could learn to love me more than James if she just tried hard enough. Reading that letter made me realize just how delusional she is. She still doesn't seem to understand the magnitude of what she's done. I've blocked Juliet's cousin too now. I'm done with the whole family except for Catherine. She and I are supporting each other through this nightmare. We talk almost daily, helping each other stay strong when our resolve weakens. It's ironic that this betrayal has made us closer than ever. We're the only ones who truly understand what the other is going through. The next few months are going to be tough with the divorce proceedings, but at least now I know the full truth. No more lies, no more manipulation, no more gaslighting about childhood trauma. Sometimes the complete truth hurts more than the partial truth, but at least now we can start healing. Update 2: Just when I thought this situation couldn't get more twisted, life proved me wrong again. The truth that came out in the past few weeks has changed everything we thought we knew about this family's history. After my last update, Catherine decided to do some deeper digging into her family's past. She was struggling to understand how her mother could help cover up Juliet and James's affair, and something about Karen's behavior wasn't adding up. Catherine started reaching out to old family friends, distant relatives, and even her dad's former colleagues. What she uncovered was shocking. The story we all knew about Tom being a serial cheater was completely false. Karen had fabricated the entire narrative about his infidelity to cover up her own affairs. For over 20 years, Karen maintained multiple relationships with different men, including a long-term affair with her business partner Mark. She manipulated everyone, especially her daughters, into believing Tom was the unfaithful one. Catherine found old letters and emails hidden in a storage unit Karen had kept secret from the family. The evidence showed Karen had been seeing Mark since Catherine and Juliet were in elementary school. There were hotel receipts, love letters, and even vacation photos of them together during times when Karen claimed to be on business trips. She had constructed an elaborate web of lies to maintain her double life. But the most disturbing discovery was how Karen had systematically poisoned her daughters against their father. Whenever Tom would question Karen's late nights or suspicious behavior, she would create scenes in front of the girls, accusing him of paranoia and jealousy. She would cry and tell the girls their father didn't trust her because he was projecting his own guilt about his affairs. Tom finally broke his silence and told us everything. He had known about Karen's affairs for years but stayed quiet to protect his daughters. When he first discovered Karen's infidelity with Mark, he confronted her privately. Karen threatened that if he exposed her, she would take the girls and make sure they never spoke to him again. She said she would tell everyone he was abusive and that's why she sought comfort elsewhere. Trapped by Karen's threats and manipulation, Tom chose to endure the humiliation of being labeled a cheater. He thought by staying quiet, he was somehow shielding Catherine and Juliet from the ugly truth about their mother. He never imagined his silence would contribute to Juliet following the same destructive path. The revelation hit Juliet hard. Her entire victim narrative about having trauma from her father's infidelity crumbled. She had built her whole identity around being the daughter of a cheating father, using it to justify her own actions with James. Finding out that her mother was the real cheater, and that she had manipulated everyone for years, sent Juliet into a complete meltdown. Juliet showed up at my apartment last week, completely drunk. She was rambling about how everything she knew was a lie, how she'd become exactly like her mother without even knowing it. She said she now understands she's been influenced by Karen's toxic behavior patterns all her life, the lying, the manipulation, the victim mentality. She begged for another chance, claiming that now she knows the source of her issues, she can work on changing. I almost felt sorry for her until she started blaming Karen for her affair with James. She actually tried to argue that she never had a healthy example of relationships because of her mother's manipulation, so she couldn't be fully blamed for repeating the pattern. Even now, she's trying to dodge responsibility for her actions. Catherine is handling the revelations differently. She's in therapy now, trying to process the years of manipulation she endured from Karen. She's also dealing with intense guilt about never noticing her father's pain. She remembers times when Tom would look sad or withdrawn, and Karen would tell them it was because he was feeling guilty about his latest affair. Now she knows he was actually suffering in silence while Karen gaslit everyone. The family is completely shattered. Tom has filed for divorce from Karen after 35 years of marriage. He's staying with his brother and finally telling his side of the story to family members who had judged him for years based on Karen's lies. Some relatives have apologized to him, while others still don't want to believe Karen could have orchestrated such an elaborate deception. James tried to reach out to Catherine after learning about Karen's lies. He suggested that maybe all of them had been damaged by Karen's manipulation, and they should try to work things out as a family. Catherine told him to save his amateur psychology for someone else and blocked his number. She's done trying to understand or excuse anyone's behavior. Juliet attempted to use this new information to contest our divorce, arguing that she was a victim of generational trauma and psychological manipulation. Her lawyer actually tried to suggest that Karen's influence made Juliet incapable of entering into our marriage with proper judgment. The judge wasn't impressed with this argument. I'm done with all of it. Finding out about Karen's decades of lies just confirms that this whole family has deeper issues than I ever imagined. The divorce proceedings are moving forward, and I've made it clear to everyone that reconciliation is not an option. Juliet can blame her mother, her childhood, or whatever else she wants, but at the end of the day, she made her own choices. Tom occasionally calls to apologize for not speaking up sooner about Karen's affairs. He believes his silence enabled Karen's behavior and indirectly contributed to Juliet becoming like her mother. I feel bad for him, but I've told him he needs to stop apologizing. He was a victim of Karen's manipulation too, and Juliet's choices are her own responsibility. Update 3: It's been half a year since my original post, and I can finally say this chapter of my life is closed. The divorce was finalized last week after months of legal battles and drama. It took longer than expected because Juliet tried to contest everything, claiming emotional distress and psychological manipulation from her upbringing. Her lawyer even tried arguing that the revelation about Karen's lies constituted new evidence that should affect the divorce settlement. The judge wasn't buying any of it. In fact, the evidence of Juliet's premarital affair worked strongly in my favor. The judge was particularly harsh about the fact that Juliet entered our marriage while actively involved with James, calling it a deliberate deception that showed premeditated bad faith. Juliet's attempts to play the victim of generational trauma backfired spectacularly in court. Catherine and James's divorce was finalized a month ago. Catherine moved to Colorado with the kids and is starting fresh. She got primary custody after her lawyer presented evidence of James's unstable behavior following the divorce filing. Apparently, he had several angry outbursts at work and got suspended. He also started drinking heavily and missed several scheduled visits with the kids. James has to undergo anger management counseling and maintain sobriety for 6 months before he can have unsupervised visits with the children. The judge was concerned about his emotional stability, especially after he showed up drunk to a custody hearing and started ranting about how everyone was against him. The most ironic part of all this? Juliet and James tried to make their relationship work after both divorces were filed. They moved in together, claiming they could finally be open about their real love without hiding. It lasted exactly 2 months. Last week, I heard from mutual friends that James left Juliet for his new coworker, a 25-year-old from the accounting department. Juliet didn't see it coming, just like Catherine and I didn't see our betrayals coming. Juliet had to move back in with Karen because she can't afford her own place anymore. She lost her job at the tech company after the HR department found out about her affair with James. Apparently, their company has strict policies about workplace relationships, and the scandal was too much for management to ignore. James got to keep his job because he had seniority, but he was transferred to a different department. Karen and Tom's divorce is also moving forward. Tom finally stopped feeling guilty and started fighting for himself. He's going after half of Karen's business assets, including her share in the company she built while having an affair with her business partner Mark. Turns out Karen had been funneling company money into secret accounts for years. The business fraud investigation has begun, and she might face legal consequences. I sold the house we lived in, couldn't stand being there anymore. Every room held memories I wanted to forget. Found a new place closer to work, in a different neighborhood where I don't have to worry about running into Juliet or her family. I also adopted a rescue dog, Max, who's been great company during this transition. My relationship with my parents has improved significantly. They finally stopped pushing for reconciliation after seeing how Juliet and Karen behaved during the divorce proceedings. My mom apologized for initially taking Juliet's side and admitted she was wrong to pressure me about giving her another chance. They love coming over to visit me and Max in the new place. Tom checks in occasionally. He's doing better now that he's free from Karen's manipulation. He's reconnected with old friends Karen had pushed away over the years and is even dating someone new. He still feels guilty about not exposing Karen's affairs sooner, believing his silence somehow contributed to Juliet's behavior. I've told him repeatedly that Juliet's choices were her own, but he carries that regret. Catherine is thriving in Colorado. She's got a new job, the kids are adjusting well to their new school, and she's slowly starting to trust people again. We talk every week, supporting each other through the aftermath of this mess. She's the only good thing that came out of this situation. I gained a true friend and ally. Juliet tried reaching out one last time after James left her. She sent a long email about how she finally understands the pain she caused because now she's experiencing the same betrayal. I didn't respond. Her sudden empathy only came after she got a taste of her own medicine. It's too little, too late. I'm sharing this final update to close this chapter of my life and thank everyone who supported me through this nightmare. The past 6 months have been hell, but I'm finally starting to feel like myself again. Sometimes the best revenge is just moving on and living well. That's exactly what I plan to do.